You're listening to the Shout Podcast, the official health and well-being podcast from the Firefighters charity.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shout Podcast from the Firefighters charity. I'm your host, Kim Robson, and this week we're going to be taking a closer look at the importance of fundraising and the incredible difference that your donations and hard work makes to thousands of people supported by the Firefighters charity every year. A few weeks ago, the charity launched an urgent appeal in the wake of the devastating impact that the coronavirus pandemic has had on its fundraising. It asks supporters to donate on a regular monthly basis to help it overcome a £200,000 a month shortfall in its fundraising income. You've responded fantastically to that appeal, and the charity has welcomed over 200 new regular donors since it kicked off, which is brilliant. And if you haven't done so already, you can add to those numbers even further by signing up today at firefighters.charity.org.uk/appeal. Also, over the past few months, we've been asking you to come up with innovative new ways to fundraise as part of the Fire Family Challenge. So this week on Shout Podcast, Sasha Wiltshire catches up with some fundraising fire cadets who, with others across the country, have taken on their own 999 challenge to raise money during lockdown. Sophie Pearce, meanwhile, talks to Northern Irish Watch Commander Chris Morrison, who received post-op recovery and psychological support from the charity as he adjusted to life with a colostomy bag, before going on to raise £4,000 by trekking through the Sahara Desert as a way to say thank you. Later on, we'll once again squeeze in as many of your fundraising and heroic achievements as possible in Thank You Too. But first, earlier this week, I spoke to the Firefighters charity's lead practitioner, Chris Gould, to find out how the money you've been raising has been helping the charity to deliver services in new ways during the pandemic. First of all, Chris, can you just give us a quick overview of your role and what, under normal circumstances, that entails?
Yeah, so hello. So I'm Chris. I'm one of the lead practitioners at the centres. So I'm a physio by background. A lead practitioner role, essentially, we help kind of coordinate the rehab that happens in the centres. So we can be psych by background or physio by background, but essentially we kind of help with the planning of the rehab delivery at the centres, essentially.
I imagine lockdown itself must have brought a whole set of new challenges for you in that role and for the organisation as a whole. So tell me a bit about that.
In terms of the centres, we had clients booked in. It was a fairly normal week-to-week intake, and we were doing our rehab, and then things did change very quickly. So we went from kind of normal rehab into clients being cancelled and clients going home, and then thinking that obviously in terms of our beneficiaries, there's still lots of need out there. There's still issues that we need to provide help for, essentially. So we've been looking at the fact that previously to what happened with the COVID, we were looking at some digital solutions, looking at different platforms and looking at how we could reach other beneficiaries remotely who potentially couldn't attend the centre. So we've done a little bit of work in regard to that, but obviously when COVID kicked in, that kind of brought all that to the fore. As lead practitioners, we then started to use the platforms that we use now. We've got a platform called Attend Anywhere, which is a bit like medical Zoom, for want of a better word. We have platforms where we give out exercise over called Solasso. So multiple platforms that we were using or we were looking to try and use remotely, so that it kind of brought all that forward. Because ultimately we've still got beneficiaries who still have needs, still have issues, who still are contacting the helpline. So it kind of moved that forward.
Sounds like you were kind of thrown in the deep end a little bit there, but the Attend Anywhere that you mentioned, and you said it's a little bit like Zoom. So how does that work and how have you found it?
Yeah, it's funny because when you hear these words, you don't entirely know what they mean sometimes. So initially when I was first looking at it, I wasn't entirely sure. We looked at lots of different platforms, but essentially Attend Anywhere, it is a very simple system. The NHS use it and it's been rolled out across in Scotland, and I think there's certain hospital trusts in England who are looking at it as well. Essentially, it's a video platform. You can connect to somebody's mobile phone or to their laptop or to a device like a tablet, like an iPad or something. You can send them a link. So essentially, from their point of view, it's a very simple system. They get a link sent to them which they can click on, and that brings them into a kind of virtual waiting room. which then a clinician can then join at a specified time, essentially. So there's no need to kind of download lots of programs. There's no licensing issues as such. It's a very secure system, so it's got its data protection from that point of view. So from a use point of view, we found it quite a simple system to bring in. Like any IT system, you're trying to get used to the little nuances of the system, and there was broadband and just connectivity things that we needed to just iron out initially, and that's still ongoing. But essentially, it's a very good platform. It's quite robust and it's quite flexible. So it's got a nice balance of being fairly simple to use, but it's very flexible. So far, touch wood, it's been a good platform, I would say.
It sounds perfect, but obviously it is going to be very different for your beneficiaries from that face-to-face or hands-on experience. But have you had good feedback from the beneficiaries themselves?
Yes, we issue surveys at the end of the consultation. So when people have finished their kind of period of care with the Attend Anywhere system, we've sent out some user satisfaction surveys, and they've come back really positively. And just in terms of anecdotal stuff, what I've been finding is that there's that kind of strange background where at the moment NHS services, some people get some input, some people don't. It's quite sporadic depending on whereabouts you live in the country. So, for example, somebody may have had a total knee surgery done, and they may get some good aftercare, or it might be somebody who's had some surgery, but they've not seen the consultant after the surgery. They've had no physio input, and they're not entirely sure what to do. So, you've got a broad spectrum of people there. But for the clients who maybe aren't getting that much input, it's quite a useful thing to start some conversations to kind of take a bit of a history of where they are with things. You can use the platform to look at how they move. We can give out exercise. We can normalise where people are with things. So if it's your first total knee, people sometimes don't know whether they're doing really well or they're behind time. They worry about things like clicking or swelling. So you can kind of explain, what's happened. You can explain the kind of process of where they are in their rehab, and it can normalise things. So that's what I found. It's quite useful to get into people fairly quickly, so they're not sat waiting for weeks and weeks, not sure what to do. You can get them started. You can address any fears they've got. You can promote the activity side of things. People are sometimes very scared of not doing the wrong thing. A lot of the feedback I've had is that people say, I was waiting for some rehab. It's not kind of come just yet. I appreciate that NHS is having, challenges from that point of view, but I'm not sure what to do. Is it okay to do X, Y, and Z? And we've gone through a bit of an assessment and said, you're kind of where you should be in terms of rehab. These are things that you can start now. This is a fairly safe thing to do. This is how you manage some of your symptoms. These are some exercises. And then we use the platform to keep in contact with these clients. So we can build it around what works for them. So some people are working from home, some people are furloughed, some people are working from home. So you can say, okay, well, in terms of our program, we can look at a time that suits you through the day. It could be an early morning appointment. It could be towards the end of the day that fits in with shift systems and things. If they need to contact us, so say we give them some exercises to do and they manage a couple of days and then they're not sure about something, the system's very easy. You can just arrange a review appointment, so they can click on the link. Back in, you come to the waiting room. We can have a quick look and see what's going on. We can amend programs. We can progress programs. So we found, I personally would say that's been a real benefit, in terms of getting to people fairly early, making sure you can get them on the right track and path. And then it may be at a certain point in time when centres reopen, we can integrate it into a centre visit then, so we can kind of build into a potential centre visit. Or it could be that by the time our centres are open again, it could be that the client actually, that they're fully much recovered and they don't need us. I think it's got lots of usefulness from that point of view.
It sounds like an amazing programme, and you sort of touched on it there, that even though the centres are going to reopen at some point, but do you think that Attend Anywhere is here to stay? Are we going to see more of this kind of working even after the pandemic?
Yeah, I would say so. If you look at what's happening even within NHS and nationally with lots of different businesses and things, they're realising that digital is a really good way of communicating and interacting with your clients. It's very good at being responsive, so you can get a lot of early intervention stuff done, which is really good. You can kind of pave the way, so it may well be a case that it helps us decide when a centre visit's appropriate, because we've done some rehab with them previously and they're in a good position. They've started early, so there may be further down their rehab journey, they don't need as many centre visits, or it could be the fact that they don't need us because things are progressing really nicely. I think it's got lots of benefits from that point of view. We're still exploring all the different options as well. It's a movable feast. These things, like with the NHS, there's a lot of digital work going on in the NHS, but it is still very new. So we're still thinking, how can it be developed? How does it meet beneficiary needs? So, we talk a bit from a rehab point of view in terms of the things that we do, but, you could look at things like group classes online. You could look at educational things, webinars. You could look at more psych support, for people. So there's lots of exciting potential really there to develop, I would say.
It's great to hear about these new bits of kit. We're having to deal with so many things, different things in the world anyway. I know it will be really good for the beneficiaries to hear that there is more development going on and more ways to use this. Ultimately, though, we do hope that the centres will reopen and we'll be able to get back to some sort of normal service. So with these expanded digital services as well, there is going to be even more need for people to support the charity now, isn't there?
Yes, definitely. I think as a staff member, I'm always very appreciative as to how beneficiaries fundraise for us. I'm always struck by, the kind of Cumbria went through some issues where we had flooding a couple of years ago. So. And that impacted the centre. We nearly flooded at the centre at Jubilee, and I had firsthand. I watched the way firefighters work, and I had such admiration for the way they work and what they do. They kind of there for us when all the trouble that tends to happen, whether it's flooding or COVID or all these things. They're there to support us as a society. So, and as a beneficiary base, they're a fantastic base to kind of rehab and look after. So, I feel very privileged to have that opportunity to do that. So I think if we can expand our services and meet that need, I see working clinically, I see the impact that some of the services have. You see people who attend for the nursing service, you see what kind of impact it has on their lives, their long-term health conditions that they're looking to manage. You look at clients who attend from a psych point of view and you see the way they change and they can get back on track with their lives and things. So we as a staff team, we see all these impacts and we realise that obviously, that all needs funding, all needs money. So, we're very grateful for what's done for us.
Chris, it's really amazing to hear how important it is to you and also to hear from you firsthand of what it means to the beneficiaries that they come. And I think if what you've just said can inspire one or two people more to make that donation, then we've done our job right. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Across the UK, young fire cadets have been taking on their own 999 fundraising challenge as part of the Fire Family Challenge. They had just one rule: to incorporate the number 999 into their challenge in a creative way. And they didn't disappoint, as Sasha Wiltshire found out.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Fleur and Liam. It's lovely to welcome you to the Shout podcast. First of all, Fleur, would you like to just introduce yourself and explain your role and connection to the Fire Cadets?
My name's Fleur Holland. I work for South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, and my current role is temporary watch manager in community safety. A big part of my role involves Fire Cadet, Prince's Trust. I've just taken over as lead on Fire Cadets. So prior to the lockdown, I had started going round the branches of the cadets, introducing myself, and it was absolutely fantastic to learn that a lot of our young people want to become firefighters. So yeah, I've got a lot to give to it, and I'm really passionate about helping young people.
Tell us a bit about the Fire Cadet 999 Challenge and how it first began.
Yeah, well, how it came about was, when we all found ourselves in lockdown, which was an experience none of us had found ourselves in before. We're all isolated. Cadet sessions all got suspended. And coming to a once a week session to cadets, it's a big thing. Cadets look forward to it every week. We have a lot of hands-on practical sessions, and a lot of young people carry on to become volunteer instructors, firefighters, and then all this stopped. So young people then found themselves not only not in school, but then also they've not got their after school activities. Partly inspired by the work that Captain Tom, fabulously did with all his fundraising, it got a few of us thinking, well, what can we do to help? And at the beginning of the lockdown, our Chief Fire Officer, Alex Johnson, she'd emailed all staff saying, this is something that's never happened to us before. If anybody knows of any organisations that need our help, please come forward with your ideas. And from that, we set up lots of working with pharmacies. We were delivering prescriptions, assisting food banks and various charities. But then, Captain Tom did what he did for the NHS, which was absolutely fantastic. But all the news surrounding that, it became more apparent that there were so many charities in need of fundraising because due to the pandemic, all these activities weren't taking place. So I got in touch with Alistair McIntosh from NFCC, and he thought, this is a fantastic idea. Let's see if we can get a working party together. So that's what we did. We all threw our ideas around, and we thought it was really important to involve the young people so they could have their say, because obviously this is something that they will be doing. We'd seen the 26 or 2.6 of something for the London Marathon, what other people were doing. But then again, inspired by the young people, they said, well, let's do something around the number 999. As we discussed, again, including the young people, everybody were passionate about helping the charity. The Firefighters charity is something that a lot of us have already done lots of fundraising for, including car washes over the years. So the young people were really keen that the Firefighters charity, which absolutely we were all delighted by this because it's close to our heart as well, being firefighters. And we know that any of us can use it at any time of his life. So it evolved from there. So rather than the 2.6 or 26, it became the 999 challenge. And we didn't want to lock it down to a certain particular activity. Certain things were thrown into the ideas, like running up and down your stairs and running around your gardens. But we wanted to make it accessible to all. So it was, well, you decide what you do. I discussed with our cadets, and our cadets came up with walking between them 999 miles. Other brigades set on their own different challenges, but it had got to be around the number 999.
So you said a bit about the variety of fundraising activities that have taken place. Is there anything in particular, perhaps an activity that's been a bit more unusual or something a bit different?
This was something that I'd never even considered. And when I saw the videos on social media, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. As well as they were doing, the cadets were doing some hose running, but as well as doing that, they were also giving out a fire safety message, which, just approaching the summertime, talking about, being safe and mindful when having barbecues, not having discarding cigarettes in open grassland, woodlands, all that kind of thing. It really, really, really just added to it, made it more fire service. I was really impressed by that one. So I think that stands out in my mind. But we've had all sorts. We've had sit-up challenges, burpee challenges. Our cadets chose to walk, and I was really, really proud of them all. And we had one cadet, she's called Courtney, she's from Cudworth. She volunteered to keep track of everybody's mileage. So at the end of every day, everybody were sending Courtney their mileage, and she'd add it to a spreadsheet, which got quite exciting once we got down to the last few miles, because we had a bit of a countdown. But yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
So on to Liam, really. As a fire cadet, fundraising for the Firefighters charity, would you like to tell us a bit about your challenge?
Basically, our challenge, as Fleur explained, were walking around 999 miles. Within this challenge, we ended up going to different locations, and there were 30-odd members, and we all played a massive part within each other, and we all supported each other going through it. So we all made sure that we gave each other motivation, we kept each other going, and made sure that we were all happy and we were all going to get the best result from it.
It's wonderful to hear about everything that the fire cadets are doing to raise money for the charity. And it just leaves me to thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just like the fire cadets, you've been finding all sorts of creative ways to fundraise over the past few weeks. So we've once again squeezed some of your most inspiring fundraising and work-related highlights into our Thank You To section. Don't forget, you can share your news for inclusion in the next episode too. Just go to firefighters.org.uk/shout podcast. Right then, here we go. Well done to firefighters at Eastbourne Fire Station, who completed 24 hours on a treadmill for 8 continuous days, raising an incredible £3,442. Firefighter Philip Mould, meanwhile, is super proud of his sons Louis and Toby, aged 13 and 10, who cycled an impressive 1,000 kilometres in a month to raise £595. A huge well done to Cheshire firefighter Becky Whiteman, who ran laps of Lymm Fire Station for 24 hours, covering 90 miles and raising a fantastic £3,117. There was no stopping firefighters at East Grinstead Fire Station last month either, as they completed an epic ladder climb and hose run to the height of Mount Everest, raising £1,020. Wilmslow Fire Station opened its virtual doors for an open day last month. They had a packed day with tours around the fire station, competitions and challenges, raising a total of £727. Firefighter Kenny Christie, meanwhile, was undeterred by the cancellation of his ultramarathon and decided to complete 2 virtual runs to raise money instead, raising £1,115. Waltham Abbey resident Nicola Matthews raised over £630 after pushing a wheelie bin for 3.5 miles from her home to Waltham Abbey Fire Station and back again. Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service rescued a cow from a narrow river in Pershall recently. Crews from Eccleshall, Newcastle and Cannock, with animal and water rescue specialists and a water incident manager, were all in attendance and pulled off a successful rescue. And finally, we must give a special mention to Kathy and Carl Mason from Mason's Gin, who committed to a donation from the sale of every bottle of their Phoenix gin. The special edition gin was to mark the opening of the new distillery after a devastating fire destroyed the former building. Bedale Fire Station in North Yorkshire picked up a cheque for an incredible £5,000 on behalf of the charity. Thank you so much for your support. That was a lot of thank yous. Mind you, few people say thank you like our next guest. Northern Ireland Watch Commander Chris Morrison did so by trekking across the Sahara Desert to raise £4,000. It was to show his appreciation for the support he received following life-changing surgery, as he told Sophie Pearce.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Sophie.
Can you please introduce yourself and your role in the fire service?
Yeah, I'm Chris Morrison. I'm a watch commander in Red Watch Northland in the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service in a lovely town called Derry. People might have heard of it from the TV programme Derry Girls, and that's where I live.
Are you on that programme?
Unfortunately not, no, but it's funny watching it because it would be based around the time I grew up.
So, tell me about the events that led to you seeking support from the Firefighters charity.
Well, in November 2016, I had an operation that ended up with me getting a permanent colostomy. And I had been on sick leave since October 2016. And I was actually returning back to work then in March, approximately 5-6 months after my operation. And somebody says, well, why don't you give the charity a ring and see, what services they can offer? I always knew the charity was there. So, I got the number off one of my local reps and just gave them a ring just to see what sort of services that they could offer and what support was there for me for helping me get back on my feet again after my operation and getting back to work.
So for those people who might not necessarily know, can you just explain what a colostomy is?
Yeah, a colostomy is it's an opening. What the surgeons have actually done is I had a large tumour in my colon and my rectum, and obviously the only thing that the surgeons could do was they had to remove my rectum and part of my colon. So what they've ended up doing is they've brought the end of my colon now out through my stomach. So I have an opening in my stomach where I have a bag over it now that collects the fecal matter or the waste that comes out. Where a normal person would go and poo in a toilet, I now poo in a bag.
And what was your mental health like? What was your mental state like during this time?
It's not good. You know, you think to yourself, you know, it's how are my family going to cope? What about my job and things like that? You know, will I be able to get back to firefighting? Because at the time I had almost 23 and a half years done in the service. So the effect on my mental health was big because I had always wanted to be a firefighter, you know, from I was any age, because my grandfather was one. In World War II, he was in the Blitz in Coventry. He joined the service and came back to Northern Ireland and became a firefighter. So growing up, it was what I always wanted to be. So, you know, not being able to finish my career, obviously, was a big effect. But then, you know, thinking about your family and how they were going to live if the worst came to the worst. So it had a big effect on my sort of mental well-being, if we can say it that way.
But it wasn't cancerous, it turned out.
Thankfully, it wasn't. It had some high-grade dysplasia, and it was maybe if we had left it a couple of weeks. I was just this typical man. I had first discovered the lump about 4 months earlier, and obviously a bit of bleeding and things like that. So if we had left it any longer, God knows where it would have ended up. Thankfully, they got it before it had gone really bad. But yeah, you know, you're thankful for things like that. You know, once we had that phone call, then it was a case of trying to get back to work, because my surgeon was one of the first questions we asked him when he said, "Look, you're going to have this colostomy, and it's going to be permanent." And we're sort of thinking, right, okay, how do we resurrect a firefighting career with that? And he says, listen, it's not going to be a problem. You can work around it. So, you know, that sort of helped focus the mind a bit.
And at what point did you get in contact with the charity?
My wife says I just didn't know how sick I was, and my surgeon said the same thing. Mr. Morrison, I remember him standing at the end of my bed the day after I was admitted to hospital, and says, you just don't know how sick you are at the minute. So it took virtually 6 months. So it was about 5 months post-op. I was sort of thinking, right, well, it's about time we started thinking about getting back to work. And I had sort of slowly been working on my fitness and things like that, but, you know, just to give myself that wee boost, and somebody says, well, why don't you phone the charity and see what they can do with you? Because I had heard of people going over to the Jubilee House and Penrith, and coming back and having a whole new sort of impetus on fitness and their well-being and things like that. So I picked up the phone one day and just made the phone call.
And you were invited to spend time at Harkham House, our centre in Devon. Tell me about that. What was that like?
It's a lovely spot. We flew into Exeter. I actually ended up going over with an ex-chief fire officer from here. So I was able to travel with somebody else. I wasn't there on my own. We spent a week there in beautiful surroundings. This really old house, just and the acres and acres of ground, and it was just an experience. From the moment we arrived until the moment we left, we were looked after.
Did you see improvements in yourself, either physically or mentally or both?
I used to love in the morning getting out and putting the headphones on, dropping my wee man to school, and just heading for 5k run every day. And then when my health declined, it was getting harder. So trying to get back to that was my goal. And the week at Harkham just sort of opened my eyes, the fact that I could push myself a bit harder. You know, there wasn't that barrier there to exercise that I thought there was. But it was while I was at Harkham that I sort of noticed, or sort of had an awakening as to how mentally I was feeling. Because while you're there, not only is it the physical side of things they're looking at, but it's also the mental health side of things. And I think I can't remember, AJ, is it, the therapist? You know, she was saying, look, I'm here if anybody wants to talk. And I think it was about the Thursday or Friday when I just says, look, AJ, sorry about this, but I need to have a chat with you. And I was sitting in the office sitting in the office with AJ, just chatting, and things just hit me, Sophie. It was just how much I had been through, and, you know, how much it had actually affected me. the things like that, you know, but we don't assess our mental health. You know, you think you're sick and you're better again, and that's you, but it's how the previous 5 months had been weighing on me, and you know, the effect on me and my family and things like that. So it was a good week. So
having drawn a line in the sand while you were there at Harkham with accepting things, you decided time to find the biggest sand you possibly could, and you took part in a charity trek in the Sahara Desert, of all places, just in time for your 50th birthday, and with your colostomy bag. Tell me about that. What was it like? Oh,
it was brilliant. It was amazing. I suppose it was coming up to the 3rd year anniversary of my of having my operation. I had obviously been diagnosed or had the whole thing happen in late 2016. So 14th of November 2016, I had my operation. And the actual dates, when it popped up on Facebook, you know, it was January 2019, and it was time for me to pay back. You know, the charity had been so good to me, and everybody around me had been so good to my family, that we needed to pay something back. So rather than go around and say thank you individually to everybody, we thought raising money for the charity would be the thing to do. And the dates, the 31st of October until the 4th of November, they were actually a week that I spent in hospital, and the run up to my 47th birthday. So I thought, what better way to mark the end of your 40s and turning 50 than have a wee walk on a big beach. You know, the main thing was the money raised for charity, and I think it topped out at just over £4,300.
Why do you think it's important that the Fire and Rescue Service supports the Firefighters charity?
Oh, it's so important. At the end of the day, it's our charity. You know, it's there to help other firefighters. It can't be expressed big enough. You know, firefighters are a completely different breed of people. You know, we're willing to run on where people are running out. We're willing to put our lives down for other people, and we do so often. And you know, to have that support there for us if things do go wrong is unbelievable. My family will tell you, my wife and my kids will tell you, the guys that I work with on the watch, the guys in Red Watch Northland, were absolutely fantastic. It's important that the charity's there for us, and it's important that we support our own charity, because if we lose that facility, if we ever lost that facility, I don't know how guys would cope. It's just great to having it there at the end of a phone line if we need it.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for your phenomenal fundraising efforts. I think the line in the sand is well and truly drawn and crossed.
You're welcome.
If you're not sure whether becoming a regular donor is right for you, here's why it's important to a selection of supporters and beneficiaries, folks just like you.
I'm Roger, a retired firefighter. I donate because I suffer with PTSD, and the charity's support saved my life.
My name is Steve Holder, and I work for Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service. The nature of our job means we help people when things aren't going well. I donate monthly to the Firefighters charity because I've seen how they help us. They need our help now. Please make a monthly donation.
I'm Tony from Greater Manchester. I donate monthly to the charity because it was there when I needed it, and I want it to be there for others in the future.
My name's Martin and I work for Essex County Fire and Rescue Services. I choose to donate every month, and I'm currently carrying out a 10k a day challenge for every day for the month of July in order to raise essential funds for the Firefighters charity. I received amazing treatment at Marine Court, and this is just one way that I can say thank you and give something back.
My name's Gary. I'm a retired Merseyside firefighter. I've just increased my monthly contribution to the Firefighters charity to help it survive during this current crisis. I received help both physically and mentally when I needed it. It gave me a lifeline and a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'd like that light to still be there for others.
That's it for episode 5. Thanks for listening. As ever, Please tell your friends and colleagues to listen, subscribe and review. All the information you need to do so is on the website and on the Firefighters charity's social media channels. And don't forget, you can still respond to the charity's urgent appeal if you haven't done so already. We'll do all this again in a fortnight's time. So until then, take care and stay safe.
You've been listening to the Shouts podcast. For more information on the show and how the Firefighters charity could support you, check out www.firefighterscharity.org.uk.